Henry killed and buried his girlfriend Lilian for one reason. She said she was done with their relationship. Henry had dated many women before Lilian, but in Henry's world, none were allowed to leave unless he decided. In the city, Henry was a name that opened doors. He lived in a highbrow estate where silence was expensive and secrets were buried under polished tiles. People knew him as the young billionaire with soft skin, clean cars, and the kind of smile that made women forget their own rules. He dressed well, spoke calmly, and spent money the way other men spent breath, without thinking twice. Henry never begged. Women came to him, and when they came, they stayed. Not because he was kind, not because he was faithful, but because he was powerful. Financially, socially, emotionally. He cheated openly. He controlled subtly. He insulted with laughter and apologized with gifts. He hit, then healed with pleasure and money. And when any woman hinted at leaving, he reminded her, sometimes jokingly, sometimes coldly, that no woman leaves him. He did the leaving. That was the order of his world. Then Lilian entered it. Lilian was not loud. She wasn't desperate. She didn't measure her worth by a man's pocket or the size of his car. She walked, minded her business, and carried a quiet firmness that came from pain she had already survived. Her sister had died in an abusive marriage. Died slowly, silently, while people told her to endure. Lilian watched that coffin go into the ground and made a vow no one heard. Never me. So when Henry noticed her at a small gathering and decided he wanted her, Lilian didn't fall at his feet. She questioned him. She set boundaries. That alone intrigued him more than any begging woman ever had. They started dating. The first month felt like a lie dressed as love. Dates were expensive. Sex was intense. Henry was attentive, almost gentle. Lilian allowed herself to believe she had misjudged him. Then one evening, over something small, too small to remember, Henry slapped her. Not hard enough to leave a bruise, just hard enough to send a message. He froze after, then apologized, then cried, then bought her gifts, expensive ones, then gave her what he always gave after violence. Were so intense that it made her doubt her own anger. It was a mistake, he said. She believed him once. But Henry had a habit. The hitting returned, the apologies followed, the gifts multiplied, the pleasure intensified. And woven into his sweet words was always the same warning, spoken casually, like a joke. No woman has ever dumped me. Don't try it. Lilian stopped laughing when he said it. The second time he hit her, she packed a small bag but didn't leave. The third time, she sat him down and spoke calmly. If you don't change, I will leave. Henry smiled, but inside him, something shifted. That wasn't a plea. That wasn't fear. That was a threat. And threats, especially from women, were things Henry did not tolerate. One afternoon, after another beating, Henry locked the doors, took her phone, left her inside the house like property. When he returned hours later, his hands were full of gifts. Lilian didn't touch them. She stepped toward the door. That was when Henry picked up the flower vase. Heavy, glass, decorative, ordinary, and swung. The sound the flower vase made when it struck Lilian's head was dull, not sharp, not dramatic. It was the sound of glass meeting flesh, of something beautiful becoming a weapon in the wrong hands. Lilian didn't scream. Her body folded like paper, knees giving way first, then her head hitting the tiled floor with a soft, final thud. Henry stood still. For a moment, the house was quiet except for his breathing. He told himself she would wake up. She always did. After every slap, every shove, every bruise disguised under long sleeves. He knelt beside her and called her name once, twice. Her eyes didn't flutter. Blood crept slowly from the side of her head, staining the cream-colored rug she had admired the first time she visited his house. Panic arrived late. He shook her, harder this time. Her body was warm, but wrong, too heavy, too limp. The silence became loud, pressing against his ears. He checked her pulse the way he had seen in movies, fingers trembling. Nothing. Henry staggered backward. No, he muttered, pacing the room. This wasn't the part of the plan. He was supposed to scare her, remind her who had control. She wasn't supposed to die. Dead women didn't apologize. Dead women didn't forgive. Dead women ruined lives. Night crept in quietly. Henry didn't call anyone. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. Instead, he cleaned. Blood was wiped. The rug was rolled up. The vase, now shattered, was gathered piece by piece and dumped into a black disposable nylon. He dragged Lilian's body into the bathroom, washed her face, closed her eyes like sleep could still be negotiated. By midnight, he had made a decision. He wrapped her body carefully, almost gently, in black nylon, then another, then another. By the time he carried her out, she no longer looked like a person, just a heavy shape, wrapped and hidden, stripped of identity. Henry drove for hours, away from light, away from cameras, away from the version of himself that still pretended this could be undone. He stopped at an isolated area, dug until his hands blistered, buried what he refused to accept as reality, and covered the ground like nothing had ever happened there. By morning, Henry was back in his house. The bed was empty. The silence returned, but this time it wasn't accusing, it was waiting.
3 days passed. Lilian's roommate waited. At first, she wasn't worried. Lilian had told her clearly, "I'm going to Henry's place." But when calls went unanswered, when messages stayed unread, when the fourth night came with no sign of her, worry turned into fear. She went to Henry's number. He answered calmly. "I haven't seen Lilian in months," he said. "We broke up a long time ago." The lie slid out easily. Confused and frightened, the roommate went to the police station and reported Lilian missing. She told them everything she knew, where Lilian said she was going, who she was seeing last, how she never stayed away without informing her. The police called Henry in. He repeated the same story. Calm, polished, detached. He even laughed lightly. Maybe she went to see her new boyfriend, he suggested. The police took notes. Something didn't sit right, but suspicion alone isn't proof. The investigation stalled, until a woman who had nothing to lose decided she couldn't sleep anymore. Natasha lived in the same estate. People whispered about her work, her customers, her nights. That night she had returned late, careful, discreet, when she saw Henry. He was dragging something heavy, wrapped in black nylon. His face was tense, his movements rushed. This wasn't trash. This wasn't luggage. Something in her chest whispered death before her mind could argue otherwise. She didn't know why. Instinct maybe, fear, or the strange way danger sharpens the senses. Instinctively, Natasha raised her phone and recorded. She recorded quietly from a distance, zooming in slightly. Henry struggled, paused, wiped sweat from his forehead, then forced the bundle into the boot. He slammed it shut harder than necessary and stood still for a second, breathing heavily, staring into nothing. Natasha lowered her phone. She went inside and locked her door. For days, the video lived in her gallery like a curse. She tried not to think about it, told herself it was nothing, told herself she was imagining things. Henry was rich, powerful, the kind of man who could destroy her with a phone call. When she heard that a girl was missing, one who worked nights like her, something tightened in her chest. When she heard the girl's name was Lilian, she paused. When she heard Lilian had last gone to see her boyfriend Henry in their estate, and Henry was denying she ever came, her breath caught. That night, Natasha opened her phone gallery. She watched the video again. Henry, his estate, his car, the heavy black nylon, his tense movements, the timestamp. Her hands started shaking. She checked the date. It was the same night Lilian disappeared. The same night Henry claimed he hadn't seen her. The same night Natasha had come back quietly from work and watched a man carry something that never looked like luggage or trash or anything alive. The pieces locked together. Natasha didn't sleep that night. By morning, she knew silence would make her an accomplice, and she walked into the police station with the video. She expected judgment. She expected insults. She expected them to look at her and dismiss her the way people always did. Instead, they listened. She showed them the video. The room changed. Officers leaned closer, rewound, zoomed in, took notes, asked questions. Natasha answered everything honestly. Where she was coming from, why she was out late, how she had no connection to Henry beyond living in the same estate. The evidence shifted the investigation instantly. Henry was summoned again. This time, not as a casual inquiry. This time, as a suspect. When he saw the video, his calm cracked for the first time, just slightly. His jaw tightened, his fingers curled. He laughed once nervously. "That could be anything," he said. "You can't even see what it is." The officers didn't argue. They searched his house. They found clean stains that had been poorly concealed, fragments of glass from a shattered flower vase hidden in a trash bag. They traced his movements the night Lilian disappeared. They followed his car's route. They found the ground, disturbed, dug. What was buried there answered every question no one wanted answered. Henry was arrested. The estate went silent. Women who once envied Lilian cried quietly in their rooms. Others whispered apologies into the air for not warning her, for laughing at the gifts, for calling her proud. Natasha sat alone, shaking, replaying the video over and over, realizing how close she had come to staying silent forever. Henry sat in custody, stripped of money's protection, stripped of charm, stripped of control. For the first time in his life, he did not decide how a relationship ended. Henry always believed money could soften any truth. At the police station, even after the arrest, he sat with his back straight and his legs crossed, answering questions with the confidence of a man who had never truly faced consequences. He corrected officers when they mispronounced his name. He requested water twice. He requested his lawyer calmly, as though this were a misunderstanding that would dissolve with the right phone call. But the evidence did not flinch. Natasha's video played again and again. The timestamp, the location, the unmistakable tension in his movements. Then came the forensic reports. Blood traces cleaned too carefully to be accidental. Glass fragments from a shattered flower vase recovered from his trash. Neighbors' testimonies placing Lilian in the estate that night. And finally, the ground. When the officers uncovered Lilian's remains, Henry stopped talking. For the first time since he was a boy, silence was forced on him. At trial, his wealth assembled the best defense money could buy, but even they struggled to argue against truth that had already been dug up. The courtroom was packed. Women filled the benches, some with folded arms, others clutching tissues. Many of them saw pieces of their own stories in Lilian's. The hitting disguised as love, the gifts used as apology, the warning never to leave. Natasha testified with trembling hands, but a steady voice. She did not present herself perfect. She told the court who she was, what she did for a living, where she was coming from. That night, she told the truth plainly, without shame. And the court listened. Henry's reputation crumbled publicly. The charm failed. The arrogance looked childish under fluorescent lights. When the verdict came, guilty, it landed not with drama, but with inevitability. Henry was sentenced to life imprisonment. No money reduced it. No influence softened it. No apology erased it. In prison, Henry learned what it meant to be powerless. There were no women begging him, no doors opened at his name, no control. Just long days, concrete walls, and nights where silence replayed the sound of glass breaking flesh. Lilian was buried properly this time. Her roommate stood by the grave, numb but relieved that the truth had found daylight. Women who never knew her cried anyway. They cried for her and for themselves, and for the times they stayed when they should have left. Natasha moved away from the estate. The whispers followed her for a while, but so did something else. Respect. Not loud, not public, but real. She had spoken when silence would have been easier. And that mattered. The story did not end with happiness or miracles. It ended with truth, with a man learning too late that love is not ownership, that money cannot buy permission to destroy someone, that no human being belongs to another. Lilian's life became a warning written in pain. The moment a man believes he owns your living, he is already dangerous. And her death carried a lesson the city could not ignore. Love that hits is not love. Apologies that repeat are not change, and staying silent never protects anyone. Some stories end in happiness. This one ended in truth, and truth, at last, was enough.